the pandemic made us realize truly in a lot of ways what we're willing to put up with, what we're not willing to put up with. It reminded us that life truly is short. Mm-hmm. And so assessing that in the moment to say, and there's a quote, and I forget who said it, and I won't even repeat it back word for word, but the essence of the quote was deciding what you want to return back to, right? There's this whole question of when are we going to get back to normal? Well, maybe normal's not really what you want to get back to. Maybe you didn't like normal. So deciding what you're willing to go back to, and being able to design that, I think is another really big key takeaway, if I could call it that came out at this time.
The Workplace Therapist Show is sponsored by the Leadership Foundry. Bringing a cutting-edge, real-world approach to leadership development, the Leadership Foundry partners with each client organization to create a custom-tailored experience, virtual or in person, that combines innovative leadership content, world-class facilitators, and one-on-one coaching to ensure your leaders have everything they need to grow and thrive. To find out more and to design your one-of-a-kind program, visit myleadershipfoundry.com.
This is one of our leadership therapy shows. We've got more of your questions. We're going to take on your questions today. We're going to take on some of the challenges you've been having in the workplace, whether it's tricky coworkers, challenging bosses, or just weird situations. And we're going to see if we can solve those for you today. So joining me for our leadership therapy segment is the wonderful Whitney Mendoza and the amazing Emily Smith.
Hello.
So Whitney, Emily, really good to have you on the show today.
Good to be back.
Good to take on these questions. So I don't know how we want to start. Do either of you want to kick us off today?
I have a question for you.
Okay.
Or something here. All right. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, here we go. Dear workplace therapist, I have two colleagues that I suspect are having a romantic relationship outside the office. They're both single, so it's not like there's an affair going on or anything. And they both work in separate departments, so they are technically not in any HR violations. But I feel like there is more going on than they're letting on, and it feels secretive. I hate to say it, but their secretive behavior makes me feel like I can't trust them in other areas at work. How do I know they're not holding back information about projects? What if they're not telling me the truth about a client lead? Their sneaking around has filled me with a sneaking suspicion, and I'm not sure if I should confront them about it or how. Signed, suspicious coworker.
Interesting question. So yeah. I almost have more questions for this person than I have answers.
Of course you do.
So one question I've got is, so are they peers? I mean, because they're feeling suspicious about them. Or do they do the same job and you're thinking maybe they're colluding to get ahead of you? I mean, that could be one dynamic, but what if they aren't peers and they're just doing different functions? Well, why is this behavior so triggering for you?
Right. That's a great question right there. Why is this behavior so triggering for you?
Yeah. So I would want to know a little bit about, is there a relational element or dynamic, or whether they always, does this person see them as competition? Because for whatever reason, they're feeling like they're getting cut out, or potentially those two again are colluding against them. So I think that's part of it. The other question. So what evidence or examples do you have to lead you to these conclusions?
Right.
Are they like having secret, like, are they secretly texting each other or having meetings? I mean, I know a lot of people are virtual, so I mean, I don't know how you would notice that, but do you have examples of something happening that you weren't included in? And again, what leads you to this conclusion? So if you don't have any examples, then obviously for whatever reason, just their behavior is just rubbing you the wrong way.
Right.
But it doesn't sound like it's necessarily a bad thing. They're not violating any HR policies. So, it could potentially be, it's just simply not any of your business, and you've got your own self-reflection to do.
Right.
So again, more questions probably than I have answers for this person, but I would really want to know a little more context and background And any examples that might help, or is this kind of purely made up in their own little noggin?
Right. I mean, quite frankly, adults should be able to have, relationships outside of work. And if they want to keep it on the down low, that might be because, maybe they've been on 4 dates and they don't know if they really like each other. So there's no reason to announce to everyone that they've been on 4 dates. So why should they have to share that? Like you said, as long as they're not violating any HR stuff. And this one says, they're in separate departments. They're both single. So yeah,
how do they know that? How do they know that both of these people are both single?
Well, at least they're not married, so there's not an affair kind of thing.
Yeah.
So
maybe.
But to Whitney's point, obviously this person knows a lot about both of them. So that's interesting. Yeah. And also give them some grace. Maybe the reason why they're being a little more covert is, like you said, Em, they just don't want everyone involved in their business. But also maybe they're just trying to really maintain a professionalism in the office, and they don't want their personal life to get brought up as either a topic of conversation or worse, a reason for them not getting opportunities or projects. I've got a client of mine that I worked with some years ago, and he and his wife both worked at the same organization. Well, she got promoted to a level above his. And because of that, he was in the same kind of group team. He was never going to get promoted to the equal level because they didn't want spouses on the same, at this, as kind of equal direct reports of one of the leaders, because that would create imbalance. So it actually kind of blocked him from being able to move up. He had to go move to another organization to move up. So maybe they're concerned about some of the politics that could play out if people know they're in a relationship. I mean, there's again, I got more questions today than I probably have answers, but definitely an interesting example.
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds like this person, I like what you said. Why are you triggered? So that might be something to explore.
Yeah.
Well, and as shall I say, I have an experience in this area. It does.
Really, Whitney? Did you and Isaac meet at work?
We did, and we were friends first, and no one knew. We didn't publicly announce that anything was going on until we were engaged, because at that point, of course, we knew the end result, right? But it does. It changes the way, even if there's no promotion, not promotion, anything like that. It does change the way, just on a basic level, of how some other coworkers treat you. So there could be many reasons why these two individuals do not want to publicly announce or share that they're possibly dating.
Yeah, absolutely. Agreed. Okay, well, why don't we move away from our daters and let's go to another question.
Okay. Dear workplace therapist, I have worked for a company of about 80 employees for 2 years now, and I generally enjoy the work that I do and the company I work for. However, there is a member of my team that I do not get along with. Actually, it's not that we don't get along. It's that I simply do not respect her work ethic. She seems to constantly be on a break or away from her desk when we're working virtually. And when she's in the office, I don't know what she does. When we work together on assignments, she never seems to have the information she's supposed to. And I feel like I'm always having to cover for her or help her perform tasks that she should be able to do on her own. Of course, she's one of those people who comes in late and leaves early on top of it all. My employer, like many right now, is trying to hire people to fill spots. So I don't expect that she would be fired or moved to another department because they just need people right now. But how am I supposed to deal with her incompetence in the meantime? Signed, trying to work with what I've got.
Okay. Interesting. So maybe just because it's the conversation we just came off of, but one of my first reactions is, or from our last conversation, what about this person is triggering to you? So I think that's a really good kind of starting place. So part of it is there's clearly a values mismatch here.
Right.
The way you treat work, the way you view work ethic is different than how this person views work ethic. So there's a difference in stylistic approaches, in values that are kind of underlying how you work. And, going back to one of the conversations that I had recently with a guest, we talked about kind of that need for that perfectionism. So maybe you're more of a perfectionist and this person isn't, and that's just bothering you because you're expecting them to operate the same way. So part of it is self-reflection. I think that's part of it. Now, there are some points in the story that I think are important that could be issues. So, for example, I think if we go back to the story, isn't there some points around there where they're not getting the work they need or from that person, or the person's not fulfilling their end of the kind of, okay.
It sounds like she may have, like maybe she doesn't know how to do certain things that she should be able to.
Okay. So if we take it for kind of face value, that when you get stuck on a project with this person, you end up carrying most of the weight or more than 50%, more than your fair share. Now we're getting into boundaries. Okay, so now we're into boundaries as an important thing that you need to be establishing, okay? Because it's not your job to do your job and their job for them. Okay, they're probably, the way it's written, their peers probably making the same salary. So, it's their manager's job to hold them accountable for that. And I've had cases where I've had clients where they've covered for somebody else, and that just prolonged the problem. Right. Because the manager thought that person was doing their job. Turns out that person wasn't doing their job, and you were doing two people's jobs. And then guess what? You're going to get resentful because you're working extra hours while that person's, hanging out having coffee. So then you're more likely to leave. Manager's unhappy about that because they didn't realize you were the workhorse. So how do you resolve that? Early on in the project, be really, really clear with this person what your expectations are for you and them. So just have some conversations around, okay, I'll do this part and you can do that part, and you have to get it to me by this date. Okay. And just and then hold them to that. If they don't get it to you and you're unable to complete your task, then you need to be able to kind of share with their manager. I'm sorry, we're not going to be able to deliver on your expectations because I've been unable to get what I need from this person. And I could really use your assistance with this. So you can gently kind of bring them in, but make sure that they're aware of the situation. And of course, one more thing is whenever you're trying to hold someone accountable, it always helps in those conversations to get them to repeat back to you what they're promising. So if she or he says, they agree that they're going to get you to kind of their portion of the report by Friday at 5:00, you got to say, okay, so let's revisit real quickly what our commitments are to each other. And get them to say it. That increases accountability by 50%, which you can get another person to actually say it out loud. So those are some of the things that kind of come to mind for me. I'd be curious, what did you all hear in this story?
Well, I liked my favorite thing that you said was at the beginning, if you start to cover for this person, it's going to continue in perpetuality, right? Because if this coworker truly is someone who just rides the coattails of everyone else, they will do that if you allow them. There is not one cover and then, I'm going to protect you on this project, but then I really need you to step up in the next. That's never going to happen. So you really have to take a firm stance at the beginning to say, not going to cover for you. This is, you need to pull your weight in this project.
Yeah. Unless they have a particularly good reason. I mean, maybe it comes out, they said, the reason why I leave early is because I've got to go pick up my kids. Or I've got a lot of health issues with my family right now. But again, that's not your problem to solve. That's between them and their manager, not you as the coworker. You're paid to do your job, do it really, really well, and kind of hold those boundaries. Doing someone else's job for them really, really well is just going to make things worse for everybody.
Well, I like that. Borrowing from another example you gave recently, I like the idea too of authoring up, and that's where you say, hey, manager, just want to let you know, coworker and I are working on this project together. I'm doing this part. They're doing this part. By Friday at 5, we should have this to you. Here's so you know what to expect from us. And then if you're able to deliver on your end, but coworker is not, that kind of lets everybody know that there could be a problem.
Yeah. And what I love about that example you just gave them is because it is that if you can put the manager in that editor role
right,
then it removes you from having to sit in that role. Mm-hmm. Right. So rather than you be the compiler of the report, say, I'm going to send you my portion by 5, and this person's committed to sending you their portion by 5. Right. But you get in your portion, you wipe your hands clean, and you walk away. And then whether they do it or not, it's now the manager's problem. Mm-hmm. And it would be inappropriate for the manager to say, hey, you need to go hold them accountable. That's not your job. Right. Unless you want to come back and say, absolutely. Can you promote me to be their manager? I'll be happy to hold them accountable. So yeah, I like that mixing in the manager as a possible accountability mechanism is good. Okay, well, I think we've got time for one more question.
Awesome. All right, here we go. Dear workplace therapist, I'm writing because I feel a little lost. The world is in a strange place thanks to the pandemic. I am working a hybrid work schedule, and figuring out the office virtual routine is still challenging. Some clients are in person, some are virtual, some industry events are in person, some are virtual. Keeping up with the constantly changing rules and protocols is exhausting. Then the political and social climate is tense. It seems there are few topics you can discuss without offending someone. Even people I was close to before seem distant. With all the unrest and uncertainty, the daily grind feels pointless, and I feel like I am floundering. What do you suggest I do in order to stay focused, to have a sense of purpose when everything feels out of sorts? I know this is a broad question, but I'd appreciate your perspective. Signed, what is the point of all this anyway?
Gosh, this is a great question. I think a lot of people can resonate with this question and probably are feeling it. 18 months into this thing, the Zoom meetings and all this virtual stuff is starting to take a toll that, we probably didn't expect. In the beginning, we probably thought, oh, this is amazing. I get to work from home and sit in my pajamas, and you can't see what pants I'm wearing and all this kind of stuff, and now it's like, yeah, and I'm just sitting at home and you can't see what pants I'm wearing. It's the same thing as yesterday, the day before. It reminds me of there's an old Seinfeld episode. It had Newman, who's the mailman, and he's like, one day he just breaks and he says, the mail. It just keeps coming and coming and coming, and it's kind of like that. It's like every day the same thing. And I was talking to a leader this week, and she said to me, it's crazy. She said, I actually had more time to go to the restroom and have coffee when I was working in the office. Now that I'm working from home, I literally have no time to go to the bathroom. There's no time because she's booked. She starts her first call at 7:30 in the morning, goes 7:30 to 8:30, then 8:30 to 9:30, then 9:30 to 10, then 10 to 11, then 11 to 12, and then a little window for lunch. And then, and just boom, 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 all the way through meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting, no breaks, no air in the calendar at all. And so there's that dynamic. There's also the lack of community. I was hearing a lot of this from a lot of my clients. So I actually wrote a blog post on this, on community and how we need to find that, because people are missing out on that. I had a client of mine tell me, she said, my community used to be my workplace. Like, I really had a real strong identity with my work, my company, and all the people I worked with. She said, now my community, I still am working virtually, but my community's just become my husband and my 2 small kids. So it's just the 4 of us, and that's great, but it's just the 4 of us, and you can't see my pants. So it's like, it's the same. It's just our world has gotten a lot smaller. And so I'm saying all this to say, what we've learned in this is part of meaning and purpose for us as human beings comes from the interactions we have with other human beings.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we need that. And we need that in a more natural, organic way. So this person's struggling with this because they're like, I'm not sure. We work in person, we working virtually. And then when I am with a person, what are all the topics that are off limits? Everyone's got their political, beliefs. Everyone's got their, their political religion, their COVID religion. I mean, there's all these religions I can't talk about other than actual religion. Probably wouldn't offend anybody these days, but all the rest are like, off limits because I'm going to offend somebody about something. And so it's finding ways for us to re-engage is part of it. So I think that's part of it. I'm going to stop talking here and get your perspectives here too, Whitney and Emily. But I just think finding places where we can connect with community is going to be part of the solve for this. That's part of the solve. And there's more, but just finding those spaces. So one more thing around that. Community it's about routine. So it's about finding a thing you plug into. So you go to like Orange Theory Fitness, which we all go to, and you go there on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Every Tuesdays and Thursdays, you plug in with those same people, or you go to church every Sunday, or whatever your religious affiliation is, if you have one. Or I was talking to one client, maybe he's got a favorite restaurant, and he goes there every Friday, and he sits at the bar, whether he drinks or not, and he just has conversation with the bartender and other folks that are there. It becomes his kind of version of Cheers, but trying to find ways to plug in if you're comfortable doing that. If you're not comfortable doing the in-person, find other ways to get community virtually. But it's about routine. It's about picking a place and a time and day, and you have to keep doing it. That's how we build community. So I think that's the one other kind of element to this is kind of starting to think about that for all of us, because we're missing that and we're hungry for it. So,
I would agree. I
Emily.
think this person, though, the sign off there, what's the point of this anyway? I think that's kind of been the big question, I think, in this pandemic is like, what have we all been scurrying around about? And do we want to keep scurrying around? So there's a lot of big, deep questions to ask yourself personally. I think for me, one of the things has been, it's got to be stopping to figure out kind of what does matter to me. And, people, community, obviously, I believe, that's why we are all humans. We're supposed to be connecting to other humans, and who and how. And I think for me, at least, it's most meaningful. And I think this is true with other people too. It's most meaningful when I do that, when I'm serving in some way, I'm helping somebody else in some way. So it becomes bigger than just me and my needs and wants. It was really important to me to facilitate a monthly study group last year, even in the pandemic. We met virtually a few times, but then I figured out a way that we could all meet in person if we all met outside. And, even when it was cold, we brought the fire pit out and we all met, and just to be able to see one another in real life, like that was important. So, and just that purpose. And, it doesn't have to be all in person. One of the practices I came up with this year was being more intentional about writing notes and sending cards. There's always somebody at the other end who could use a few words of encouragement. And I feel like the more I make myself do that, the better I feel about the world. If I can, send Isaac a note that says, "You're awesome. Thanks for all that you do to make my life better," then it makes me pause and think about that. So I think for me, I have definitely struggled during this era of like feeling like, what is the point of all this? But I feel that way less when I think about myself less and reach out to others more and, figure out where there's a need and try to help somebody with that. That's been helpful for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let me, Whitney, I want to hear from you too, but as you're talking, it made me think of Viktor Frankl. So for those who don't know Viktor Frankl.
Well, I take that as a compliment.
So he's the founder of existential psychology, which is all about helping people get through difficult times in life through finding meaning and purpose. And his life very much mirrored that. He was a Jewish physician in Austria during World War II. And during that time, he and his entire family were taken into concentration camps. And Viktor was the only member of his family who survived. And in his autobiography, he wrote, it's called The Man's Search for Meaning. He wrote in there that as soon as his fellow prisoners in the concentration camps lost that sense of meaning or purpose, they would curl up in a ball and die the next day.
Literally.
So literally. And so he wrote in the autobiography, there's 3 ways that we can find meaning and purpose in life. And they're not mutually exclusive. You can combine them. The first one is through doing work or doing a deed. like doing something, often in the service of others, like Emily was just mentioning. But doing work or doing a deed can help us find meaning and purpose. So how can we look at our work as meaningful and purposeful? The second one is the relationships we have in our life, our roles and relationships. So whether it's being a friend, being a parent, being a son or daughter, just being a good neighbor. It's our relation, being a mentor or a manager. I mean, any kind of role in relationship, but we find meaning and purpose. But again, has to do with our connection to other human beings, right? So we're hearing that theme. And the third one is a little different. It's how we view and approach unavoidable suffering, is what he calls it. So it's how do you view unavoidable suffering? So that's where your personal faith journey might come in, and how you view situations. Where does hope come in for you? But could also just be your general mindset. Are you a glass half full or a glass half empty kind of person? But I was thinking of Viktor as you were talking, because I thought those might also be ways for us to think about, like, how do we find some kind of meaning in all this? And what are some ways that we can reconnect to that, given that we have been so distant and distanced from other people, and obviously, according to Viktor, we kind of need that. So the just thoughts that came to mind for me.
I don't mean to cut in, but I'm going to cut in, Whitney, real quick. I was reading I read a lot of young adult fiction just because I love it anyway. But I was reading one the other day, and it had to do with Zen and Buddhism and this kid and whatever. But I have not studied Buddhism at all, but I didn't even know that, like, the first precept of Buddhism is life is suffering. So basically, to live is to suffer. And basically, as a human being, your kind of job is to figure out how to accept that and accept that well. And I think, kind of to this point, it's not always sunshine and rainbows. Actually, it's rarely sunshine and rainbows. And that's we're always in quest of the sunshine and rainbows. But it's really to accept that, life is going to be hard. And if we can find ways through that purpose, through that connection, it makes it less so. So I think that's, I had just had that little aha, which I love getting ahas when I'm reading like little teenage fiction. And then the other, I worked for a long time in an industry where people, it's a fast-paced industry. Quote unquote, all we're doing is helping people, buy a house. That's in a real estate closing industry. And so our paralegals who do all the work and do the hard work, I think when I was managing a team of them, that was kind of like I remember my team being like, so what does it matter kind of what we do? Like, we're just pushing paper. We're just filling in forms. We're just plugging in numbers. And I remember that was one of my big moments for myself as a manager, was like, no, yeah, it is a bunch of numbers. It is a bunch of paper, but let's look at the big picture. And it was that purpose. Like, let's see the purpose. We're helping people through a difficult time. We're giving them information that they didn't have before. They're in a stressful moment, and we get to help cure that. So it's just a matter of perspective, and it's a matter of, turning the viewfinder a different way. But it's powerful. It's really powerful. And it was for my team too. So that was cool. Mm-hmm. Whitney,
do you have anything you'd like to add to this conversation?
So my two were, if you're happy with where you are, like you genuinely enjoy your job, I go back to the example that you first shared, Brandon, of the lady working from home that just has zero time to, even go to the restroom working from home. You really have to be, the word that came to my mind is ruthless with your schedule, right? If your day is booked because you do have calls that you're going to have to take, but 9:30 to 10 is available on your calendar and someone asks for it, they don't know that you have that open. You don't have to give that to them. If you need that 30-minute slot to go to the bathroom and get something to eat, because like I know me personally, the conversation is going to be way better if I can go to the bathroom and eat. Right?
Yeah.
Let me have that 30 minutes to myself. You do not, just because it is available, and Randy Haynes speaks on this all the time, leave the air in your calendar. If you have air, build air and then leave it there. Just because it's available and someone asks for that time, you don't have to give it to them. So build that time in. If you're not happy where you are, I've read a lot of articles on the Great Resignation. Of people that are just leaving their jobs in droves. And there's a lot of people out there who are hiring. To both your point, Emily, and where you were following up on that, Brandon, is the pandemic made us realize truly in a lot of ways what we're willing to put up with, what we're not willing to put up with. It reminded us that life truly is short. And so assessing that in the moment to say, and there's a quote, and I forget who said it, and I won't even repeat it back word for word, but the essence of the quote was deciding what you want to return back to, right? There's this whole question of when are we going to get back to normal? Well, maybe normal is not really what you want to get back to. Maybe you didn't like normal. So deciding what you're willing to go back to, and being able to design that, I think is another really big key takeaway, if I could call it that came out at this time.
Yeah, I like that. I like both what you both said, Em. I liked how you talked about purpose, kind of thinking about that, and not trying to not ignoring that suffering is part of just being human. And then Whitney, I really liked your kind of both those points had a lot to do with agency. Like, don't forget that you've got some agency in all this. Like, you can control your calendar. You can control what you want your new normal to be. Don't feel like it's happening to you. And we've learned, we've tasted off a new menu. So what do you like and don't like about that menu? So
I would say too, one thing, one phrase that I have just always hated is self-care. Cannot stand that. Because I think it implies like I'm just sitting around.
I'm actually I'm not surprised that you don't like that phrase.
I know. It's not shocking.
I'm not really a big fan either.
Well, to me, it implies like I'm eating bonbons and getting my nails done and headed to the spa.
Right.
But it's so much more when we actually look at what it really is and what it really should be. It's this. It's asking yourself, like you just said, Brandon, what am I willing to take on, or what? And like what you said, Whitney, like, where is the air in my calendar that I need to care for myself? Like literally basic care functions of the bathroom and lunch, it's like, it's self-care is making sure that you get what you need in order to do the things you need to do in the world.
Maybe the word should be like self-preservation.
It is, but I mean, it could be what you might need is a 20-minute walk at the park with your dog. Like you might just need that in order to be a better human being for the world. And that's, that is self-care.
Yeah.
Or self-preservation.
Yes.
Or actually, it's actually preservation for everyone else in the world.
That too. We're all going to coexist way better.
Because you might be murderous if you're not. Yeah.
Well, this is great. Whitney, Emily, thanks for today. This was great. I really enjoyed it. And I've taken away a lot of things that, made me think, that's not only about how we're helping folks in some of their workplace challenges, but even how I want to view this time and what it means to me. So yeah, thank you both for hanging with me today.